Well, I'll cover a little bit of material that many of you are familiar with, but I think it's really important for us to understand kind of the beginnings and where we came from and how we got the place that we are today, and where some of these challenges faced today were established. So I'm going to take you back into the Wayback Machine a little bit and start talking about the first generations of the web and what began. And in 1994, we started to see the emergence of a sizable audience on the web, and it was a pretty niche audience. And it was an audience that was primarily just consuming information that was out there on the web. But for the first time, corporate organizations started to see the value of using the web as an outbound marketing channel that they could communicate to this segment, the marketing segment. It's a very big segment. It was a few million, maybe 10 to 16 million in the 93, 94 time frame. But it was starting to grow. It was getting a little bit of importance, and marketing saw the value in this emerging channel. And by 2003, it had grown to somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 million people globally, so it was absolutely relevant. And marketing was now starting to invest a lot more in it. But the attributes that we were looking at this point, there were some innovative companies that were doing more than just informing, but the majority of folks on the web were using it as a way to inform their customers and potential customers and vendors, et cetera, of information, to give an ability to search and find them and be found, and a way to form their brand image and brand message. And it was more or less a brochure type experience. Up until 2003, that was what the majority of companies were doing on the web, and for the type of an experience, this was something that was a solid fit with marketing. So Tim O'Reilly in 2004 kind of deemed the web as Web 2.0 as we were emerging from the dot-com crash of 2000, 2001, where the web was declared dead by some people, but many understood that was far from the truth. In 2003, 2004, many companies started to realize that the web was a unique place. Not only had it grown to become such a sizable and important audience, but there was understanding that as we started to convince and persuade people with our marketing messaging, we persuaded them, we had opportunity at that very moment to engage them. So we got response immediately from the thing that we were doing. So we started to see a transition in the way that people were approaching the web, and it moved from just a communications medium to a way to engage customers and a way to serve customers, a way to give a response to information that was being given out on the web. So we saw a lot of e-commerce and customer self-service and that type of activity going on the web. And we started to see that marketers weren't only just communicating simple web pages. Now needed to be much more sophisticated, that we had to understand the technologies, and there was now databases and interfaces in IT that were required in order to be successful. So for the first time, a lot of companies, marketing organizations, were now being required to integrate somehow or collaborate minimally with IT in order to be successful in achieving that conversion on the web. So that was approached from the majority of companies, as we saw that there were shadow IT initiatives, and there was a lot of outsourcing. Companies were just taking the entire experience to somebody who could do the web in that way, who understood the marketing aspect of it, and they would just give that over to them as a partner. And then IT would be providing data, but for the most part was providing the data on data dumps and throwing it over the wall. So there was this very loose relationship with IT, and was a tight relationship with IT. It was just in minimal required ways. So that was kind of the world for a long time, from 2004 to 2009. That was our behavior. And in 2007, we had a pretty significant event, and it really took the world and all of us about 2 years to realize what had really just happened. Steve on the stage and presented the world with iPhone, and everyone was thinking things like, the media was saying it was a very clever device, it was an expensive, elegant Apple type thing that was just going to appeal to Apple audiences. But the reality was this. For the time, technology had all come together where you had the internet, you had of a computer, and the usability experience that was now available to the average person, and it was all with reach in a handheld device that you could carry with you. So that was the transition. It was just something that transformed the way technology impacted us, and this is kind of the shakeout from that, is that next generation, and this is the web that we live in today. The pace of technology since then has been unprecedented. So cell phones have standard, analog cell phones have now been replaced 75% by smartphones in the marketplace in the U.S. So 75% of all users in the U.S. now have a smartphone device that they carry around with them and connected 27. About 27 apps on that phone, and it's 30 hours a month, so they spend a significant amount of time on it. The other significant thing that's taken place over the last few years is the use of technology. So when you look at how we've transitioned from the PC world to the mobile world, usage of the internet has quadrupled, so it's gone 4 times over. It's now exceeds the amount of consumption of the internet that's done by PCs and laptops. But the interesting fact is that PC and laptop usage has also increased by about 15%. So instead of replacing our consumption with consumption, we're consuming more information. Using the internet even more today. We're using it twice as much and headed towards using it 3 times as much as we were 5 years ago. So the amount of things we're doing with the internet have changed, and the way we use it has changed. So since we've got that device in our pocket, we're now immersed in technology. We coexist with it. It's changed the way we do business with companies. It's changed the way we get up in the morning and live our lives. It's changed our work-life mix. There's a lot of things that have transpired that change the way we address our audience. A term that's used called the SMAC stack that kind of tries to summarize the major technology changes that we should be thinking about, and that's the social explosion. So since we've got that computing device with us, we can now access and share with all of the folks that we know and love all day long, which is pretty cool and sometimes overwhelming. Mobile, with mobile devices and tablets, etc., that are continuing to grow. Analytics, cloud. So in the analytics space, we've the big data analytics and predictive analytics that are going to emerge. So as we look at all of the information that is available to us with all of the channels, we've got all of this information about the behavior of our audience at our fingertips. So not only can we provide them with real-time convenient experiences, there's expectation from the user that we're able to predict what they need and provide them with something that's convenient before they ask for it. That predictive analytics gives us the ability to provide services that aren't just convenient, but are expected by that audience. And then the immersion or the cloud technologies has also created another aspect, which is the ability of large-scale hardware and software platforms has now become very attainable by small companies, and it's given us the ability to move very quickly, even as large companies, to do testing and get into environments very quickly. So a lot of changes that have taken place in the market that have changed today's changes. So with that, the omnichannel, as we're talking about, and then the growing importance of the CDO, CMO, and CDO partnership. So with these experiences, not only do people expect you to create a better experience, but they expect that experience to be tied into your organization, and for experiences in one platform to be the same as the experience in another platform. When I go deposit money in my bank account through the ATM machine, I expect to be able to see that on my mobile phone the same afternoon, and that there's that type of user expectations which you, marketer, have to be working very strategically with key organization to figure out how you serve the demand in the marketplace. So what does that look like as we continue to move forward? So let me press today's challenges. So with this rapid transition in technology and capability comes this overload of information that the CMO, CDO is now being presented with. You are now being required to be more tech savvy than you've ever had to be. The CMO, CDO role is probably as complex as the CIO role from a perspective. You have platforms that are emerging constantly. As the platforms such as iPad, which came out and hit 50 million users in 2 months, become relevant, there's technologies that stand behind those that help you to go meet that channel need in the marketplace. So we start seeing things explode in the marketplace. And look at all of the platforms that are out there now. You've got CMSs and Marcom and analytics, BI, social publishing, monitoring, tech optimization, SEO, localization, project management, performance monitoring. There's big data and analytics and predictive analytics, and there's the personalization and experience management that goes behind it. There's the identity management that drives all of these experiences, and on and on and on. You can see that this world is becoming complex. And with complexity comes another challenge, which is we used to work with a handful of trusted partners. We had a couple of agency partners that we leaned on very heavily to help us be digital. And now the digital world has exploded and become so complex that we really need many very good technology partners to help us be successful in this myriad of technologies that we have to use. So the question are, how to manage the relationships between all of these customers or partners, and how do I get all of these partners engaged business with me? How do I get to the point to where they can do the same things on their platform that I'm doing on the 20 other platforms that I'm utilizing? How do I train them and integrate them into our IT process? So the challenges that are being from that perspective. One is the channel growth. So just the emerging platforms, how do you keep up with the exploding marketplace and the rapid launch platforms that are coming around, and we see all of this kind of coming about in media before they're actually launched. But the thing that just can quite grasp is which ones are going to hit and which ones are not going to hit. So it's very difficult to respond to all of the noise in the marketplace about channels until it actually happens. But the good news is it's happening very quickly, and the bad news is it's happening very quickly. So these new channels become very difficult to respond to, and we've got very short time frames to them. And then velocity. So the pace of change continues to happen more rapidly. So that's an enormous challenge. And honest about it, many of us would look at where we're at today with our response to what's happened since 2009 and say the changes over the last 5 years have been very disruptive, and many organizations are still struggling to figure out how we get in front of it. How do we catch up with what's going on with mobile technology and social and predictive analytics and customer experiences and getting into IT? And we're looking at it and saying we've got a lot of work to do. If we're with where we're at, how are we with the velocity? It's so the picture is this: I'm running behind the train and it's pulling away. The bad news is the train is going even faster and faster, and it keeps getting further and further away. How do we solve that problem? So we're headed. Tomorrow is the web of the visible web, the prolific web. It's the web doesn't exist, right? It's everywhere. It's like water or electricity. It's just expected to be there, and it works, and it's prolific. It's going to continue to accelerate. You're going from the PC and the PC and the laptop to the mobile world and all of the devices that came with that, and the things we're seeing today with wearables and and the VRs that have web browsers on them, and the game machines that all are web integrated, etc., to a brand new world of the IoT, which is getting ready to explode web-based technology into every aspect of our lives, from connected cars, wearables, appliances, connected homes, packages that have individual trackers on them, and devices that are buried in the ground to measure the soil consistency so that farmers can tell exactly what to be applied to the fields. I mean, the pervasiveness of web technologies is in the world now and is getting ready to absolutely explode. So we're going from this omnichannel experience to this is my friend Philip Dobbs' presentation. He said we're going from omnichannel to omnipresence, where the web is everywhere. And the aspect of that is the disruptors. We have companies that are capable of using these technologies, and they're becoming so inexpensive, and they're becoming so attainable that innovative companies are capable of being very disruptive. And the perspective you would get is, two of the most notable stories are Uber, who has truly transformed the face of the taxi experience, where the customer has now found an experience that they absolutely love, that is a more convenient experience, that tends to the mobile aspect of their life that they like so much, and actually it's a low-cost, no-cost way for the company to provide it. And then Airbnb, similar, there's disruptors. Disruptors are in all businesses. So you can no longer rely on large structure and the barrier for entry into your marketplace being so high that it's hard for another competitor to emerge quickly. The barrier is being lowered daily. Something that we need to look at and say, how do we stay innovative so that we can thwart disruptors? As stated, just kind of recap, believe the pace of velocity of technology, the time frames are getting even shorter. Velocity is getting even faster. So we're going to have to look at ways that we can respond to technology. The time integrations into the enterprise are becoming mandatory. Companies or users, consumers, partners, vendors, dealers, all the folks that you're out there trying to work with expect real integration into your business. It's no longer being based on industry. It's being based on, I've got a mobile experience and I have an expectation. There's growth in specialty channel partners. We're seeing new partners pop up all over the place that are focusing on niche technologies that you need to be aware of every day, and growing complexities and demand on compliance and security. In the news, there's been several incidents over the last few months that are assured going to result in legislation that every one of us are going to need to be aware of when it comes to managing customer and partner information and transacting information securely and treating that information securely. And CMO and CIO alignment are even more critical today than they've ever been. We look at the path of how a marketer is about doing their business, which is looking at innovation. And when I think about innovation, my perspective is, innovation is about fail fast, fail cheap, and don't fail the same way twice, and try a whole bunch of stuff all at once. How does the IT organization work in that capacity so that you can start responding to platforms very quickly? And then, how do you create a relationship where the CMO and the CIO are not just aligned but are aligned in purpose and resolve to the challenges of digital marketing that you're facing today and more so tomorrow. So I'm turning it back over to Matt.
Really sets the stage for we could dissect things further, but I think it's really helpful helpful to look at some of the companies that are doing this well. And the temptation is to look at disruptors first, and that's fair enough. I think that there's to learn from companies, digital natives, and Uber, and you mentioned Airbnb, like Salesforce and Google and Facebook and so on, that you can learn on lessons. The poster child I like to look at is Amazon, who actually, I think in '94, right at the dawn of the web where you started, Lou. But there's you learn there. But at the same time, one of the things that's extremely helpful is, who are companies that didn't have the advantage of that digital start, who actually had profitable, successful businesses doing to digitally transform. But to just do a dissection of Amazon. So some of you may have seen me talk about Amazon a lot. I don't want to be considered the Amazon fanboy, but there's a lot to be learned here. First, this book that came out a couple of years ago. If you haven't read it, I find it a fascinating read. It covers the full spectrum of the success story of Amazon. A lot of lessons about what's behind success. Look at the technology perspective. In fact, there's even a chapter on APIs. The API Academy guy. I love actually. Interestingly enough, he was mentioned as the Web 2.0 pioneer who really coaxed Jeff Bezos into saying you need to look at APIs. But fundamentally, it traces the story of Amazon starting. Some people may look at it as a company that started an online bookstore and by accident fell into these different lines of businesses that it's done, but that's not the case at all. In fact, Amazon vision right to the which was to represent the biggest watershed in the world, but Amazon, Bezos had the vision of an everything store. So what we see with Amazon today, which is the place on the web where you could get anything and everything, focused from the outset on convenience. There's a tendency of these digital companies to try and zero in on the technical bits, but the biggest issue from Amazon from the outset was this ability to think so and idealistic vision, but a pragmatic way of delivering. So, as an example, as being the with vision of being the everything store on the web, but like I said, started out just saying let's focus on doing real estate, selling books. For that it was a very simple supply chain. There was a kind of open the marketplace for online books, and a good place to start small and iterate towards the vision. That Amazon has used. Done early on was to say, what is our value proposition to our clients? What no one is doing, rather than say it's all getting revenue by selling stuff. I think the initial insight at Amazon that was so useful is to recognize the value proposition that it's making, we make money when we help customers make their purchase decisions. So take a step and saying all the goods we want out there, but it's really about connecting with customers, understanding their mindset, going to make purchase decisions, supporting mindset. That's the proposition, and that led a lot of the things that Amazon introduced into the market that helped them become dominant. For example, they were that in order to help make purchase decisions, you needed to collect data around products. What is this product about? And they have an editorial group that write up product reviews. And at the same time, they started collecting user reviews. And they over time that they could collect the actual customers, their ability to try and scale using their own editorial staff, and essentially, or that editorial staff, and just with the customer reviews. Right away, they recognized that they could and they were one of the pioneers, as Lou talked about, in terms of companies that rather than just providing information about what they did as a company, they were able to provide services on the web, provide fulfillment for their actual services. Definitely the pioneers in collecting information about that activity and feeding it back into their whole model. So what we've done is go on that seed that we wanted with retailing books, able to fulfill the original vision and go beyond that. And about business agility in the world of digital and in the modern business world, and able to go from being an online retailer of books and span out from there into all these different areas, right? And lines of books, not only selling books and getting into the second-hand marketplace of books, but eventually the book with the creative platform, and that as a way of extending out into the tablet space more generally with the Kindle Fire. Reselling, the reselling market, originally competitive with eBay, they started reselling anything, getting in marketplace space, anything. So offering these fulfillment services so that any retailers that want to go on their platform can then take advantage of their fulfillment processes. In the scope of what they're retailing, and to be able to retail anything, and providing a much more personalized experience through those reviews, through that data. Now, identity. And one of the interesting things, I think I saw a stat last week that their platform, Amazon Web Services, which is an offshoot of all these practices that they developed to do fulfillment and retailing, is now, I think, $5 billion to $6 billion business for Amazon. So the archetypal company for being able to pivot, start with grand vision and a small starting point, and then continue to iterate to meet that vision. And what's and two, Tim O'Reilly had urged Amazon to start offering their services through APIs. APIs being a way for web developers to come on to their platform, engage services, and build their own front-end applications so that you could have a user experience built by a company that actually uses the services in the back end. This is very evident in the fulfillment one that I described in their Amazon Web Services. But in 2002, this is all kind of hearsay, but has been well documented. Essentially, your exposed data, if we're going to build things, we're going to APIs, and they have to be designed and usable by external developers. If you don't do this, you're gone. And this is something that's been also published from Werner Vogels, who's in charge of the Amazon Web Services, for where mentality. When they build products at Amazon, they by specking out what the APIs would look like that would provide the product, and developers start using those right away. So this is a fundamental part of how they're innovating. And obviously, I'm the API guy. I'll be talking more about that. But we can see a pattern emerge of how Amazon does things. I call it data-enabled disruption, where they've become extremely good at understanding data and not public data that they use on the web in the traditional web way we think about it, but also they interact with the data, collect the data, and then this loop where they start with their vision, focus small, certain areas, continue to iterate and persist until they're successful, and broaden the vision again and continue. And there's more detail. So that's, as I said, this is not a story of digital transformation. It's a story of digital instantiation of a company that started out in the digital world but provides a lot of good lessons around how other companies can utilize that data. What about the companies that didn't have a digital world? Who are that have been able to take advantage of these digital opportunities while maintaining their successful bricks and mortars or legacy businesses? So, a couple more of a catch-all. I'll start with retail, as we're just coming off the Amazon story. I've been doing a lot of research in this area around retailers, and I think there's some things here. We can who's this in the e-commerce space, and that's where you might think it would be Amazon, but as you can see in the graphic on the right, about 20%. Here are companies that are growing at a faster clip, and I'll the top two. So the company that focuses one of the leaders in arts industry, where you might think is from the web, is a hands-on physical thing, but one of the top e-commerce growth retailers out there. And so when we're looking at companies in the digital space, I find that there's a lot of companies having education. I think had some good insight in their history to understand what would their customers. So they have a very customer-centric approach, which is to say they and that their customers are customers who might be do-it-yourselfers on the cars. They have customers who would be repair shops, and so they serve those markets. So they do focus and align their services to their customers' needs, as opposed to looking from the supply chain out to the customers. They do good segmentation around their customer base, so understanding different categories of buyers in their space and how can they service them. And one acquisition recently around AutoAnything.com that was a good success, and it was part of boosting the online growth. But the ones I thought was that they'd acquired, actually much earlier in their history, acquired a company called alldata.com, and what they do is they provide all digitized information around how to do car repairs, how to use the car parts, including as cars have become more sophisticated and complicated with computer machinery, that's harder. So they have a lot of information that they provide. So thinking of Amazon story, you're already in here saying, okay, if you're an auto customer, in order to get value out of the parts that you're buying, you need to understand how to use them. How can we support that? And so they have that business around collecting information around analytics, drive pricing and promotions. And for all these, I've included things. I'm not going to have enough time to talk them in detail, but as I distribute the slides, you'll be able to do some more reading on them. One with a good history of innovation, started out as a bait and tackle shop back in the 40s, I believe. They pivoted into the bigger athletic space. Recently, they're getting a lot of value out of the what they call leisure, yoga outfits and so on, that may be more just as towards fashion as they are to activity. They've also, you can see they're leading the growth around retail. What they've done is they've done some really good analysis of how their e-commerce aligns with their actual business. So that each standalone business, or not only as a standalone business, but also as a way of driving more purchase activity in their stores. And they're seeing that linkage direction. So to draw awareness of their new store locations and through digital channels. But at the time, they're finding that when they open new stores and new locations, it actually provides a spike in buying activity in the regions where they're opening new stores. A lot of other interesting work around partnering, stores within stores, co-branding with products like Nike and Under Armour in the store. And digital channels are providing the means for doing that. And Home Depot is one company that's one amongst a number of big retailers. Actually, Dick's Sporting Goods is another. who have store mode in their mobile apps, which I think is really interesting. You shop in the store, you're able to use the mobile app to find things. They give inventory and aisle numbers, so you have to wait around for an associate to serve you. And this that allows them, to be a digital blind spot for stores before. If you're on the e-commerce channel, sure, you can monitor all the buying activity that way, and some activity through purchases in the store. By engaging through the mobile channels, it allows you to collect information around buyer customer behavior within the store that can to help find the way that customers are not only in the e-commerce channels but in the stores themselves. And an obvious one, right, for digital leadership is insurance. But I think about it, what is more data-driven than insurance? So, advantage of the digital channels here. Big retailers or big stores that are consumer-facing names. Allstate have the e-shop acquisition that they made recently. Deep profit. There are a lot of these disruptors coming into the insurance market that were impacting the Allstate core business. Able to acquire a leader in that space and offer differentiated service. But just like with some of the examples we saw before, rather than look at e-commerce as a way of just repeating what they do on their channels, they're actually and they're doing a lot of work to upfront to do customer qualification, understand what fits their needs, and being use the best of breed of either their straight direct-to-consumer e-shop offerings or through their approach in their core Allstate business. The company, there's a number of insurance companies offering this now, I believe, but they're one of the first. They offer this snapshot device, which allows you as the customer to give them to driving, and so show that you're a driver, you can get discounts on your driving. So this is an interesting one. I think this was originally to take advantage of the fact that a lot of car insurers would be just demographic business models and saying, if you're under 25 driver, then you're going to get a punitive rate. Whereas it gives younger drivers a chance to show, they're not crazy on the road. They can drive well. And so this is a way of digitizing the driving data, using that, and then playing it back into the discount system and giving a better rate. Win-win for the customer and the company. It's a lot of information in different spots, and we're coming up with the challenge of kind of having information silos. So they did the technological work to create something that they call the wall, which is a singular customer view, and I think it gets information in real time from about 70 different back-end legacy systems, or potentially up to 70 systems. It's it all on the screen that you see to the far right. This was something that they were able to build rapidly within 3 months and get out there, and has been a huge win. More customer sourcing channels even than for the direct customers themselves. Advisor in the healthcare space, they're a CA customer. Case study in the links below. But with the explosion of digital data coming into hospitals, and how do you synthesize and distribute data, and it serves their core business, either channels or to service their consultants out in the field, who are hoping to provide valuable healthcare information to doctors. There's a big communications company in Canada, and as a Canadian, they have taken the absolute gold standard content of the NHL, the National Hockey League. They've a long-term contract. They're using digital means to deliver to do two things at once: preserve a very valuable, sentimental brand of hockey in Canada, while at the same time looking to engage a younger audience of millennials who like to content through digital channels. And understand that need by one, using digital channels not just to distribute the information, distribute the content, but also to collect information on how it's being consumed and who's consuming it, so that they can understand that and feed that back into their business channels. And the last example is from an industry that you might not associate so much with a focus on marketing, which is the energy utility space. And Gas and Electric, which is a subsidiary of Sempra Energy, they did interesting stuff. Smart grid is sweeping the utility sector, and it's an explosion just like the one I mentioned in healthcare. We're able to collect much more granular information about energy is being consumed by customers, how it's being consumed, when it's being consumed, and so on. It gave them an opportunity to redefine their relationship with their customers, as opposed to just being that guy utility that you yell at when the power goes out or send you a bill, to come in and say, look, we're a partnership together in more efficient usage of energy, and to give customers a better view of how they use their energy. They were able to provide discounts on how to use, when you use energy at a time, you'll get a better price. And on top of that, and offered a contest, if you can show that you're really preserving energy well, you can win and so on. That was a big success in the San Diego area, and it was a win for the contest winners, but it was also a win for the customer base and education on how to conserve energy in all aspects of their lives, and a win for the company. They could be more efficient with how they deliver the energy and create more expenses. More information on all these in the channels below, but as you can see, all companies are established companies who are taking advantage of digital means. And there's a pattern that emerges, right, which is business goals. I talk in detail about a couple of them, but using digital reach to achieve business results for those business goals, right? It's not an outbound thing. I think the common patterns here that's most insightful is that they are taking the data that they are able to now collect through those business results and fit into their business goals. So this digital feedback loop allows them to get the information in two ways. And I think that the tighter you make that loop, the time you have between the way extending the information and collecting the information, the value you're going to get out of that. And Amazon is the obvious example. We've seen examples as well where a lot of the innovation that's happening in the digital space beyond just publishing more content through digital channels. It's all using that digital opportunity to collect information on your customers, these habits, identities, and so on. And so if you're new to APIs, you might start with a definition like this, which is very technical, talking about HTTP protocol or REST or like that. But, another way of looking at it might be it's the web without browsers, so the way that information is exchanged on the internet. But really, the definition matters in the CMO and CDO chair is really not about what they are, but it's about what they enable. So APIs are the way that Amazon was to pivot the way that they did in their history. APIs are the means by which social media has taken off. Mobile what provides into those mobile apps, and as the stats that Lou cited earlier, you can see this is the majority of consumption of information on the internet. But as described in the digital feedback loop, really APIs are they enable that feedback loop. So at points where we're taking data and collecting data, that's the APIs come in. That's the APIs are by which you're getting the information, collecting the information. In fact, a lot of transformation that's happening out there in established companies, we're probably past the wave where we're digitizing data. Right? information. I think healthcare, there's still a lot of opportunity to digitize collection of information, but the data is there somewhere in the organization. The question is, how do you make the data accessible, and how to update the data that's there? It may be there, but it may be stale, and it may be hard to get to. APIs are the way that you can get data more easily and update and keep the data current more easily. APIs, really, from a digital perspective, it's a way of being plug and play technology. So with APIs, and as I mentioned before, gives a way to allow new capabilities to be plugged into easily than if it's in a database somewhere. So now, instead of just going through your website, just going through some of the you can utilize other services who may have their own captive audiences to then plug into your services. API foundation for omnichannel. So once you have an API with a service, it is then accessible to to mobile apps, to web apps, to IVRs and call centers, and so on. And they are so the most easy one to understand is that when you've got mobile apps, they need APIs in order to get data. The digital about how they're fundamental to that. We're probably the most common and most as using APIs to help with partnerships. To market together. API is available. It's a easily connect between the business of you and your partners, between the technology groups and you and your partners. And a CIO relationship, which has been a long time since the web hit, and into that space where the CIO is the de facto owner of the web for companies, the obvious technological tie-ins. API is a great borderline so that, as a CMO, you can worry about what the content is of the API, what it's delivering, and let the CIO deliver about how it's delivered and how it's built and how it's run. From a marketing perspective, APIs open up a brand new channel, a brand new audience, which is developers. Developers look at APIs as a tool, something they use if they APIs, when they're building new mobile apps, they want to look, the first place they go is to see what APIs are available to help me jumpstart my service. You've got a new audience to speak to, an audience that's a valuable audience, because if one of those developers comes up with an innovative app that uses service, you are able to have a new channel for revenue, a new channel for awareness and reach. But there are on this journey that you got to be careful about. So one of them is the core. So in all the examples you saw, that the digital means, which were in all cases, they were as kind of a force multiplier for the business models that were in existence. Maybe Amazon's the extreme example because they spread so quickly into other lines of business, but in the other cases, API is a real powerful tool to help answer your core business. There's a challenge around, sometimes people just throw anything out there as an API and expect that will be valuable to an audience. There's a lot with the API to go out and find your core audience. Who is it that you want to use this API? And part of the case, which partners would this be valuable to? You get them using it, because the more that you have on your APIs, the more value you're going to generate with the APIs. Solutions are not so able. This speaks back to the shadow IT case. So I think the successful examples we've seen are where you do have the CMO and the CDO working hand in with the CIO so that when an API is delivered, it's not just for the current, but it's something that can be an enabler for other opportunities in the future, so you don't end up with isolated pockets of technologies that expire. Look out for security vulnerabilities. These mobile have been gone out there, especially in industries where maybe security isn't top of mind, there have been a number of breaches. We've seen it with Snapchat, we've seen it with Yahoo, and where they just had a mobile app and they thought their API was just going to be used by the mobile app. But once the API was available on the open internet, it becomes a new attack point. So it's just something to be careful about. Talk to companies about how they get started with APIs. We use this API 360 model with these 4 boxes. And when you start talking about alignment with business, making sure API is useful to a target audience, definitely important. We want to make sure that we engage with the audience that's going to use APIs and make the APIs usable to serve that audience. We want to make sure that things are scalable and evolvable so that they last the test of time. And we want that they have good manageability and security. And you can see all of these boxes address the previous slide. API, you probably know CA as one of the leaders in the API management space. To address those bottom 3, which are foundational, and a bit more of API management. API is a technology platform solution, and I make sure everyone understands, when you buy API management, you're not getting every benefit of the API because you have to have good business strategy and usefulness and so on. But you get value singular out of the API management platform. It helps manage the relationship with your digital partners, help consolidate and control access to your assets, that real-time actionable feedback, the digital feedback loop, so that you can see what's happening, help growth, and a one-stop shop for developers. So hopefully you've seen some good examples of digital innovation and some thoughts of how to use APIs to do that. Now back to Lou to talk about some next steps.
Awesome. And I hope we've done a good job of a few things. One, you understand kind of how you, the CMO, took ownership of this crazy world that you're now steeped in. Understanding that there is a that we all have today that is very real that we need to address. I think Matt did a really good job of helping us see that there are companies out there who are doing a successful job of addressing the challenges of the digital transformation. And the other thing that we see is that companies that are doing a really good job of addressing this are using APIs as a piece of their strategy. It's not the whole strategy, but most of the companies that are successful in meeting the digital transformation do have an API strategy to go along with that to give them those benefits of moving nimbly. So that's what you said. The next question is, where do we go from here and how do we get started with this thing? So we just wanted to give you a kind of a quick picture of kind of an approach to setting an API strategy. And we always recommend that you take a quick start approach and do not take the trying to boil the ocean or try to figure out everything that you're going to need to do comprehensively and approach it all at once. It's daunting. But we're looking at pick a project that's got data that's of strategic value and some low-hanging accessible data, and use that as the first project that you do and write APIs against. Don't just do that in a vacuum without considering all of the components that are going to make your API successful. The infrastructure that you put in place is capable of enterprise scale. Make sure that you're considering all of the governance concerns that you're going to have. If you've got a guy out there that has to have and security and IT approval and business approvals, and there's all of these processes that have to happen, how do you do all of that, and how do you put that all in place and practice so that your API still can be consumed very quickly? Establishing communications channels so that you're keeping in touch with those developers and informing them of what's going on and reaching out to your community, and then establishing brand standards. So there is an aspect of a brand with that development community around your APIs. So that's kind of the minimum that we'd say. Go ahead and take that as your first approach and get started. To to expand it throughout the enterprise. And we're not talking about comprehensive again. We look at it and say, do a survey, look at all the major data that you're using throughout your enterprise, and pick that, Pareto's principle type thing. Pick the 20% of the data that provides 80% of the value, and focus on building APIs behind that. Looking at your infrastructure to meet the demand, and creating a roadmap for how to get all of those services built out over time. Communication is key, and that if you stop communicating with your audience, you're probably going to see a decline in consumption and use. And letting everybody know what's going on is the key to the success of your API program. And then continuous improvement is the idea. Nothing is going to be perfect and finished. It's going to be changing with the demands of the marketplace. So don't aim for perfection, aim for velocity and quality. Approach that we're at is unbundling and true transformation, which is kind of the final, pinnacle API implementation, which is Amazon approach. Taking your business and looking at it from the value of all of the parts versus the process, and looking and saying, how do I present my APIs as product and not as process enabler? And this slide I'm going to read to you, but we do have some additional information on how you can get started with some resources to get you started with APIs that are included in the slide deck that aren't a part of the presentation today. Those will be handed or sent out tomorrow to all of the folks who attended slide deck. And I know we're running over a little bit, but if there are any quick questions, we'd be happy to hang out and answer them.
Thanks again, Lou, and definitely my fault we ran over. but please feel free to either post them in the chat box or question. Well, it's busy, and I see a lot of people dropping off now because of the end of the time. So hopefully some good feedback in the Q&A box. If you have questions, contact information as well when the slide is distributed. But thank you very much for this opportunity, and we hope to help you in the future. Again, Lou.